Welcome to a homegrown family podcast where we grow the produce and the kids. Welcome back to a homegrown family podcast. I'm your host, Joe Metler, and thanks for joining here again today. So, a few episodes ago, I shared my experiences with pronghorn hunting in North Dakota and also my experience with fishing over in Lake Michigan. So I kind of want to round out those episodes today by talking a little bit more about hunting and fishing, and then also to be able to share some recipes with you through Jeff Benda, who's our guest here today. Thank you for joining us here today, Jeff.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good to see you.
Part of the Homegrown Family Podcast, I talk about a variety of things, including hunting and fishing, and I think that's an important part of being homegrown, per se, is that you can go out and get your own food. You don't necessarily need to grow it all, but, going out fishing, going out hunting, foraging, for any wild game, or even mushrooms or things like that. Taking advantage of the world around us. So today I have Jeff, who's going to share his love for hunting and cooking by sharing some of his favorite salmon and pronghorn recipes. Just in time for Easter, which is going to be just right around the corner. So looking forward to that, and hopefully be able to try something new myself. So yeah, just a quick introduction here, Jeff. He is the founder of Wild Game and Fish Media, where he works with businesses in the hunting and fishing and shooting industries. He's had a history in the past of about 25 years of restaurant and catering working in those industries. And now he's a full-time wild game and fish developer and food blogger who lives in Fargo, North Dakota, and just so happens to go to the same church that I do, so I get to see his lovely face every once in a while. Kind of a small world, because Jeff is actually a brother-in-law of one of my friends in college, Nathan.
Yeah.
So yeah, such a small world, and so I'm excited to have him here today. Just business goals is to help celebrate, local fish and game and provide achievable, bright recipes designed to build confidence in new cooks. And I can tell he's definitely helped me be inspired with some of his recipes I've already tried on his website. And I'm definitely a little bit better of a cook now than what I was when I first got introduced to Jeff here. So, yeah. How's it going?
It's good, yeah. It's good to be able to talk about wild game again. It's kind of the doldrums of winter after hunting season, and a couple months go by, and people are still kind of excited to be cooking wild game. But, once you hit, April, it's just unless you're into spring snow goose hunting, and then you're super excited because they're all over North Dakota right now. But, so it's just kind of good. My mind is always thinking wild game and fish recipes because of what I do for a living. But it's good to be able to have a conversation about it.
Well, that's awesome. And you mentioned goose hunting. I never really done it. I have some brother-in-laws that go out and shoot the goose in the spring, but I've been reminded of it as I've been a part of Jeff's website, the wildgameandfish.com. He has a newsletter that goes out every Tuesday or something. Every
Tuesday morning. I've got about 1,000 subscribers. So yeah, so you basically get a new the new recipe. That's how often I publish a new recipe, is once a week. And so on that Tuesday morning, I email it out to everybody, and then kind of what's going on in our life with my wife and daughter and I, or maybe it's a reflection on hunting or on fishing or living in North Dakota, something like that. So it's kind of helps me with my creative outlet a little bit to be able to write. Yeah, I miss it. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the snow geese or goose, and so that reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Because I think this last week was a snow goose recipe, I think, that popped up, if I remember right.
Yeah. There's different goose recipes that I try to do. It's kind of that seasonal. Same with fish right now because it's Lent. So people are looking for those. So yeah, it's kind of that season. Yeah. So
I guess before we get too much more into it, Jeff, I'd like to take some time to learn a little bit more about you.
Sure.
And your passion for hunting and cooking and things. Has cooking always been something that was involved with your life, or is it something that you just learned as life went on, or just developed throughout life?
We weren't really in the kitchen young. That was just not a thing. My brother and I were just too busy playing outside. But fast forward to high school, I did some lifeguarding and teaching swim lessons, but mainly when I started working in restaurants, and I kind of fell in love with it. And then my sister, was one of the young people who left North Dakota as soon as she could, as soon as she graduated high school. She went off to college, started working restaurants, and she would come home, and she started working in some pretty nice restaurants on the East Coast. And she came home, and I remember I was 16 years old, and she had brought home this cookbook, and we started cooking out of it together over Christmas. And I just kind of really kind of fell in love with cooking. And like, it was like hours and hours, this recipe. And we just got to visit and talk and stir this sauce, this pasta sauce, for hours. And you just really had to stand over it. But it was also kind of the social situation where we got to, have the family together. And really, since that moment, that's kind of became a huge thing. We started my mom and I did catering, and we would do that together. And so pretty much any time we came home, and then I went off and did restaurants too. So pretty much any time we were home together on a holiday, we were cooking and we were in the kitchen. We didn't play cards or board games, things like that, which I married into that family. Yeah. And I am so thankful because when it's the holidays, honestly, I don't want to cook.
Right.
I don't.
Thing in your mind, right?
Yeah. I want to just sit back and relax and play pinochle for 6 hours. That's heaven to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we kind of did that. I ran off, worked resorts and in Minnesota and then down to Florida. I lived down in Fort Myers and out on Captiva Island off the coast of Fort Myers and worked with chefs there and really just fell in love with it even more. Managed restaurants for different groups down in Florida and in Minnesota, and then kind of came back and worked in Grand Forks. That's where I grew up. I was an Air Force brat in Grand Forks. So I was born in North Carolina, but then my dad was stationed here. So I lived in North Dakota since I was 7. But, one of the things was we did not go hunting and fishing. We grew up on the air base, and that's where we were. And I would beg and plead to go fishing, but we didn't really leave the air base. I mean, we'd go to Grand Forks, but we didn't go and explore like the Badlands or Western North Dakota. We didn't drive around and do that. So I didn't know what was outside. If I dreamed about being outdoors, and actually not that my family wasn't wonderful, but I read all these books about like My Side of the Mountain, Island of the Blue Dolphins, Sign of the Beaver. These are all books about stories with children who get left out in the woods or in the wilderness and have to survive on their own. That was my dream.
Gotta find those books and let my daughter read them.
Oh, they're phenomenal. Yeah. And then, most people are like, oh, what about Hatchet?
That's the one that came to mind.
Yeah, Hatchet was after my time. I mean, that was kind of got popular in the early 90s. So like that was not, I missed out on that. But really, that was my dream. And as soon as I got a driver's license, I was skipping school and going fishing. I mean, just like I was enthralled with it. So, but that's, I just didn't grow up with it. Yeah. And fast forward, I mean, the whole time I was in Florida, anytime I had a day off, and I really did work 6 days a week, 12-hour days in the restaurants. On my day off, I was out fishing. And that's what was going on. And when I came back to North Dakota and went out back to school at Valley City State, some guys took me duck hunting. Now, mind you, at this point in my life, I was going for a teaching degree. I was going to teach social science.
I was going to ask you what your education background was.
I was going to teach government and econ and history in public schools in Florida around Tampa. I was going to move back to Florida for good and leave North Dakota and get out of here. And some guys took me duck hunting at Valley City State, and I shot my first duck, and I fell in love with it. 2 weeks later, I shot my first pheasant, and a couple weeks later, I shot my first deer. And I announced, I was like, I'm not leaving. Like, I just saw North Dakota in a whole new light. And I've said this before in other interviews, but it's like when Dorothy, anybody who's seen The Wizard of Oz, it starts off in black and white, right? And then when Dorothy steps up into Oz, everything is in Technicolor. And as soon as someone introduced me to hunting, I saw North Dakota in just a whole new light. I was driving around back roads, watching farmers combine sunflowers, and the dust in the air at sunset is the greatest picture in nature I have ever seen in my entire life. And that moment sticks in my head. And that was in 2003, right? I mean, fast forward 22 years. Yeah. That moment is like, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And it was moments like that that I got to experience while out running around back roads trying to find birds, deer in North Dakota. And, since then I ventured out west to the Badlands and fell in love with the grasslands out there and public land. And, so that's kind of where I got my introduction to hunting and fishing. And, then life had to get real. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to stay in North Dakota. So what's going to happen? So there I am. I'm like, well, instead of going to teach in Florida, I get a phone call from Monsignor Jeffrey Wald, who at the time was at Holy Spirit.
Yep. Yeah.
Down the road.
When I first came back to North Dakota, Wald was there. Yeah.
So he invited me for lunch. He said, unbeknownst to me, my mom had called him.
Funny.
Because she was like, oh, thank God. One of my children has a degree and they're going to use it and go teach. And then I announced, hey, I'm going to stay in North Dakota and then maybe I'm going to buy a bar and grill in a small town. And she was like losing her mind. So I get this call and Monsignor Wald said, hey, come to Fargo. And he gives me the tour of Holy Spirit. He didn't tell me what was going on. He just said, come have lunch with me. And I hadn't seen him in years. We had done World Youth Day in Denver together. And, I'd been an altar server for him. I had spent a year and a half at Cardinal Minch Seminary right after high school. And he drove me there and dropped me off. And I was there for a year and a half at Cardinal Minch. So, the Catholic faith has always been really a big part of my life. My mom was a youth director growing up. But so now here I am, not going to Florida. What am I going to do with my life? And I get a call from Monsignor Wald. He's giving me the tour around Holy Spirit and they have a youth house, the Bosco House. And I said, yeah. St. John Bosco is my patron saint because his day is January 31st and that's my birthday. And we have the same initials.
Huh.
John Bosco, Jeff Benda. And Monsignor Wald goes, that's perfect because you're going to be my new youth director.
Huh.
And I said, that's not my plan. And he said, I don't care. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. And I said, okay. And for the next 16 years, I worked as his youth director.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so I was the youth director at Holy Spirit Church. And then that doesn't pay well.
Yeah, it's not
church
great.
Work isn't the greatest, but
mostly donation.
Yeah, but remember I had a love for cooking, and so anytime we had a fundraiser, I started the Wine and Dine event that they had there. I had dinner theaters. We had a run of dinner theaters for years, and then I had a catering business on the side. So I always had a catering business on the side. Then I got out of church work just a few years ago, and trying to decide what it was I going to do, and my wife. I had started, when I got married, everything was deer sausage, pheasant was put in a crock pot with cream of mushroom soup. I just did what everybody else taught me, right?
I still do it.
Yeah. And that's just what everybody does. And then my wife, Melissa, God bless her, she was like, I am so sick of deer sausage. Can't you make your deer look like one of these amazing things that you cook for a catering event or on our date night? And I was like, yeah, I should try that instead of getting it processed and just getting it into these thin
totally
steaks.
To the point where my roast has got to change. Just putting them in the crock pot. Yeah. You kind of all taste the same because the seasoning and stuff just never gets in there and everything. And
so she challenged me to do it. And I started doing recipes and then I started posting them on Facebook. And then somebody's like, hey, could we publish your recipe?
Oh, someone approached you about it.
Yeah. They found me on Facebook and said, hey, we run this website, Harvesting Nature. They're like, can we publish one of your recipes? And I was like, oh, wow. So then I started a website.
Yeah.
And then they're like, hey, you should get Instagram because everybody's on Instagram. And I didn't have Instagram at the time. But 90% of my business from clients, they find me on Instagram, really? Which is interesting.
That's cool.
So yeah, I just kind of started doing that. And that's been 3 years. And we were coming back from Bismarck a few years ago. And so during COVID, everybody was doing these cooking classes, these Zoom cooking classes. And I was selling them and I was like, oh, it's sold out. And I was doing wild game. So I was doing a wild game. Yeah, I was hosting it because nobody else was doing wild game cooking classes. So I did a wild game cooking class and it sold out. And then another one sold out and another one sold out. And we were just leaving Bismarck and I just got a notice that the other one sold out. And I looked at Melissa and I was driving I said, oh, another one sold out. And she goes, that's so cool. I wish there was a way we could figure out for you to do this full time.
Yeah.
And remember, it's 3 hours from Bismarck to Fargo. Well, she fell asleep. Our daughter is sleeping in the back. And for 3 hours, because what I heard my wife say is, you should quit your job with benefits and insurance and just cook wild game and make pictures and make a living doing that. So I came up with this crazy business plan that did not work during that 3 hour drive. But I drove Uber for 40 hours a week in addition to my regular full-time job at the time for 6 months. And then I quit and I started the business.
You just needed something to get you started, some funny money.
Yeah, because I, you know, as a husband and a father, like, I mean, we might have a dream of a small business, but I know too many people who started restaurants and they filed bankruptcy and they borrowed money from friends, from family, and it's not a good situation.
Yeah.
So I did not want to do that. I didn't want to go take out a loan. And I needed to be able to support my family. And I said, I'll always make as much as I used to and enough to go on your insurance. And that was the deal with my wife. And, you know, the last couple of years, I had to drive a lot of Uber. I did because it just wasn't happening. And freelance work is horrible.
Yeah.
Because you don't know.
Roller coaster.
Yeah. You're supposed to get paid. The paycheck is due on May 1st is what the contract says. And you don't see anything until after the 4th of July. They're just not. But now it's a different story, right? And I redid the website. I have enough, it's about 100,000 page views every month on the website, on the recipes at wildgameandfish.com. And now I work with Mediavine, their ad agency, and I'm making a living.
Just having things posted on your website? Just
the advertisings, yeah. So when people go to the website and they see the ads, that pays the bills, and it's doing very well.
Yeah, that's great. I was a reminder that for those who are listening to, the website was wildgameandfish.com, and I had to check out this website, you know, knowing of Jeff being in the same parish, and like, oh, this would be a perfect time to, like, you know, do my 2 stories that I have with salmon and pronghorn, and try to get Jeff here to kind of wrap it all together. And I had to creep on him a litlittle bit online, you know, to see what he was all about.
Sure,
you know. And at first he's like, oh, you know, I could do a podcast, but it's going to be a little while because I'm in the middle of revamping my entire website and this and that. So I'm like, okay, I'll wait. And I patiently waited, and then I checked out his website and I was like, man, this is really cool. There's a lot of cool images, a lot of cool stories. Like, so that's one of the things I like about Jeff's website is that he kind of shares a personal story, as you kind of alluded to earlier, actually.
Yeah.
Whether it's your family, like the one I think was goose hunting. You say how you actually shared the story on your website about how you got into hunting because of this other guy brought you out and things like that. And
then I'll even incorporate, you know, talking about, you know, my daughter's really interested in going out hunting. There's a picture on one of the goose recipes of her holding up Canada geese because she went out with us on early goose season, which is a great time to take kids because it's August and it's warm.
Yep.
But even though it rained the whole night before and it was cold, but it did warm up and we had lots of snacks, so she had a good time. So yeah, I really focused. I've been very intentional since the beginning of promoting North Dakota. Promoting hunting, fishing, North Dakota, because that, you know, I think a lot of people know the story of Theodore Roosevelt and falling in love with North Dakota. And there's so much of that with the Theodore Roosevelt National Park out there. But that was what it did for me. It really did. People introducing me to the outdoors, but it was also just the people of North Dakota and me falling in love with North Dakota because of the outdoors and because of, you know, and being able to connect with wild game, cooking, and really getting people excited about it. And with their cooking and showing people what they can do with the wild game. I think people like put it in a box, like we said, like you make your deer into deer sausage. And if you're going to eat a deer steak, it's going to be overdone and tough.
Probably.
And then your pheasant is going to be in a crock pot with cream and mushroom soup. And that's it, you know? And so I really try to introduce people to, you can do so much more, and I think we put ourselves in a box.
So I got a pretty good example of that, Jeff. So we had mentioned to you before earlier here that like crock-pot venison, I put it in there, and it's the kind of same thing over and over. And my wife one day says, "You got to try something a little different with this venison, roast and stuff." And so I perused on Jeff's website, and I can't remember the exact recipe, but typically I just open it up out of the freezer, put it in the crock pot, 6 hours or 4 hours or whatever, But this recipe said to cut it up in chunks, put it in a pressure cooker, but I didn't have one of those, so I just used, a crock pot. Cut it up into like 6 chunks, a 3x3 inch square or something like that. Season it up, and then, saute on each side or sear on each side. I think it was like a minute or two. I don't remember exactly.
Yep,
but
a couple minutes on each side.
Yeah. And then I threw that in the crock pot, and then you let it simmer on low for 3 hours because it's smaller chunks. But the amount of flavor that I gained from cutting up the chunks and then putting the seasoning around it and searing it, I noticed that it wasn't quite as dry either, it seemed like. It kind of held a little bit more moisture. Yeah. Yeah, my roasts are never going to be the same.
Yeah, I think seasoning first. That's one thing.
And I never use enough. I never used to use enough.
Yeah.
It was always just, sprinkle salt, that looks good.
Oh,
now it's like, no, you really gotta.
Just for people to understand, if you're in the back of a kitchen, like if, I've worked at a lot of fine dining restaurants, but like if you saw how much salt we put on your food before it goes out, you would probably lose your mind, especially steak. But I mean, it's a good thing. Like it tastes good. And good kosher salt. I'm not talking about the iodized thing for 50 cents on the bottom shelf at Walmart. Like good kosher salt.
Now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean like good kosher salt. And, I order mine on Amazon. And it's not that expensive, but.
What do you think of that Himalayan salt, that pink Himalayan salt?
Yeah, it's not the same.
My wife was kind of raving
kosher
about that
salt, like Diamond kosher salt, get it on Amazon. Comes in a big box. It'll last you it'll last normal people a whole year, right? Like I order it every 3 months, like every couple months.
Post a link to the show notes down there.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's seasoning it and then browning before you put stuff in the crock pot. Meat and vegetables. If you saute them before you do that, it adds so much more flavor, right? Browning and meat, we talk about, it's called the Maillard reaction, Maillard. It's mallard, add an I. That's how mallard duck, but add an I in there. It's the browning of the meat and it adds so much more flavor, but also just maybe taking the time to, before you do a stew or a soup in the crock pot, if you brown your meat,
even then,
and then put that in the crock pot and then saute your vegetables like just for a few minutes and then put them in the crock pot. It's just like going to blow your mind on how much more flavor. And I think a lot of stew,
because a lot of stews are
just
on
a stew. Yeah. Right? And then let it go. And then it cooks a little bit faster. It's going to be done in a little bit less time, but it just adds so much more flavor. Yeah.
You kind of gain. It does not take any more time overall, which is
right. I mean, it's literally just a few minutes and it's a little extra pan, put it in a cast iron or nonstick, whatever you have available.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes it good. Yeah.
I wanted to share at least a couple recipes with you guys.
Yeah.
One being a pronghorn one. I mean, pronghorn could kind of probably be placed with venison also, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of similar meats.
When it comes to venison, I think like really any of the recipes, venison is going to cover deer, elk, antelope, moose. It might even be bighorn sheep, like a sheep one. But so, if you go on and you look under venison, like on the website, it has venison. And and then on there, it's like under that, it's venison steaks. It's got venison roasts, venison for shanks, venison sausage, all kinds of different things. But ground venison recipes, I think a lot of people just end up with ground venison recipes. And, I always think it's funny. If you Google venison spaghetti, okay, just everybody out there, just for fun, Google venison spaghetti. And probably, depending on when you listen to this, my recipe will be the first one that pops up.
Oh, nice.
And people are like, oh, I loved your people are like commenting on there. It's the best venison spaghetti ever. And here's what's funny. Okay. It's just spaghetti, right? It's any other spaghetti recipe out there. I mean, it's mine. It's homemade spaghetti. But people are taking the time to Google venison spaghetti.
Yeah.
It's ground venison. And you could use ground beef if you want to.
Yeah.
It's not any different. But by gosh, that's one of my most popular recipes. And I'm making money off that recipe every month. That recipe pays for my daughter's piano lessons and voice lessons every month. Just that recipe. Venison spaghetti. Crazy. So, I think anything with ground venison, would love for you to go to my website. You know, there's all kinds of things on there. But if you have a ground beef recipe, is it leaner? Generally, yes, but maybe your butcher mixes with fat.
Yeah.
If you have it done, we don't. We just do straight ground venison. We do so with antelope, with deer. We grind it up.
My folks have always done like a
30%
or 50%.
Yeah, we used to, and then or pork fat. You'll see like straight on pork fat, which you can get at the NDSU meat, North Dakota State University meat. You can get straight pork fat. But I have these white chunks in there, and my wife is just not a fan. And so we just do straight burger and I don't know what I'm going to do with it in the future, like what recipe I'm going to do. Yeah. And I really want to be true to that when I'm doing recipes for people.
You can always add burger and mix it. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So really take your antelope. If you're going to process it yourself, it's really important, when it comes to antelope, anything, but like getting the meat cooled down right away. And so I always stress this to people. When you go out antelope hunting, you need to have a cooler with ice in the back of your vehicle, whether it's a truck, a Honda Accord. I don't care what it is. It's an antelope. It'll fit in the back if you cut it up. But it's really important to get that meat cooled down right away. Okay. It's so important, but it's also, you want to keep it dry. And also the hairs, antelope hair on your meat. That's where people are like, it doesn't taste good. So keeping it free off hair, and if it's windy and if you're cutting it up and getting it processed, if you're field dressing it, you end up with a bunch of hair on your meat, on your hindquarters or front, whatever it is, your back strap, get that cleaned off right away. I actually keep like an old rag in my vehicles. And that way I can, with some water, and make sure that those are all cleaned off.
Before it dries on there.
Before you put it in the cooler. Yeah. And then before you try to package it, then for goodness sake, don't package it, vacuum seal it, or put it in a Ziploc and throw it in your freezer and then take it out and then try to clean the hair off. It's going to be funky if you leave that hair in there, especially antelope. It can happen with deer, but antelope, it's just very overpowering. So getting it free of hair, making sure the meat is clean, so you're not having blood, you're not having hair, and then getting it cooled down right away. And then your hindquarters is what you want to age. Okay.
I've read about aging, and I've never really done it a lot.
Yeah. So you can wet age it or you can dry age it, and it's not difficult. You do not need to go out and buy a huge walk-in cooler. And is that my dream? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the problem is I teach people about this, and so my wife knows that you don't need a walk-in cooler, so I'll never have it. But you literally put ice in the bottom of a cooler, okay? And then put because you want to keep it dry. You don't want to just throw it in a bunch of ice water. That's not good.
You have to have it exposed to the air too, so you can't.
But you want to have it right. So you can put your ice in there, and then on the way home, you can just, if you have ice, that's great, and then you can just put a piece of plastic in between, and then you can throw your meat on top of that. That's fine. To get it home. Once you get it home, if you want to age it, if you have a beer fridge or something like that, you can hang it up in there or just have it on racks. And that's enough circulation. The refrigerator has enough fan motion going on. You're not doing this for long term, months. Okay. you would in a restaurant. Yeah. You really, this is going to work. So for the layman at home, you don't need to go buy fans and have that. That would be great if you have a little fan and you want to plug it in. But make sure, as long as the door is going to shut. But really, if you just get it in there and just give it a few days, a week would be great. But for sure, a few days, because just like anybody who's seen a cop show where they come upon a dead body, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, how long has he been dead? Well, based on rigor, right? Okay. But remember, because we're animals, when we die, we go into rigor and we stiffen up. Mm-hmm. So if you shoot an animal, it doesn't matter if it's a pheasant or a deer or an elk. You want it time. It's going to go into rigor. It's going to stiffen up, and then it needs time to go out of rigor. So the muscles are going to constrict. If you freeze your meat while it's in rigor, and a million people do this, every year. They go to deer camp. You shoot a deer on Sunday afternoon. You cut it up with your cousins, and then you freeze it.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah, right? But that, if it's gone into rigor,
yeah,
that's going to be super tough meat. If it's in full rigor, you really need to give it, preferably, that size animal, 48 hours to 72 hours. It's gone into rigor, and then it's going to relax. And then you freeze it.
Yeah. So most of the time when we're over at deer camp,
yeah,
Saturday mornings when we get the majority of our deer, and then they kind of get, hard to find because everybody knows that they're out. Right, the hunters are out. And usually by Sunday afternoon, we start cutting up. Sometimes Saturday night.
Yeah.
But, North Dakota, when you're deer hunting in November, or Minnesota, oftentimes you shoot one in the morning, it's going to be frozen by night. And then usually Sunday we'll let it, put it in the our cutting room or whatever and let it thaw for just a little bit and then start cutting it up. Does the freezing have an impact on it?
Yeah, you really want to be able to, you want to get it cool. So if you can get the meat, the quarters, even if it's the hindquarters, just have a cooler and put it inside where it's not going to freeze. Yeah. If you put it in the back of your truck, this has happened to me. Okay. I was out in Montana, shot a couple mule deer. It was so cold. It was storming. I walked around in blizzards for days, but literally by the time I got home, the meat was frozen solid because I had ice and then I put it in the cooler. And then by the time I got home in the back of the truck, all the way back from Montana, that meat was frozen solid because it was so cold outside. That's not good. So if you need to move the cooler into the vehicle,
into the cab,
right? Yeah. So it's not freezing. It's cool, but it's not freezing. That would be a good thing. Or if you can bring the cooler inside, you want to have ice in there, but bring it inside just so it stays cool and dry just for a few days. And then you can cut it up. I would really do that with the hindquarters. I just would really stress that. But a week, we do a week, and it makes a huge difference.
It's like
especially on antelope.
Opening hunting, let them sit till the next weekend and second weekend, and then cut them up.
Yeah, that would be ideal. But if you want to get them home,
but if you need to walk in cooler because you usually get 6-7 deer, So
yeah, that makes a big difference. Yeah. So I mean, is it ideal? I mean, especially if you have big parties and things like that, it can get difficult, I know. But if you're out there like antelope, for you, and you got to go out to Western North Dakota and do that. Same with me last year. Then you can get it on ice. Yeah. But then keep those hindquarters dry. And the reason I say just the hindquarters is because that's what you're going to use for steaks and roasts. The front and your back straps too. But the rest of the deer is just going to it's going to get ground up. So it doesn't matter if it's tender. You're either going to braise it in a slow cooker and it's not going to matter. But if you're going to do some of those bigger cuts into steaks, you really want it to be tender. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff, I didn't know we could do a whole episode on just
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
This is awesome though. Yeah. So, but one of the images that stuck in my mind when we're talking about, letting it age is that when my wife and I were over in Italy, you go past the storefronts and then there'd be this meat rack there. It looks like it looks to me unappetizing. So it looks like it's so dried out.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that? And then you'd see them just also you cut a slab off, and I'm like, oh, are they going to eat that?
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe I should have actually went in and tried it. I probably would have been impressed.
Yeah, I think just giving it that time to and then give it a week, and then you can vacuum seal it. Yeah. Right? And then you can get it into steaks. And
I'm gonna have to try some of that. Have you ever tried canning meat?
I haven't.
One of the things I want to do.
Somebody sent me, in the business I do, people send you all kinds of stuff to try. And so I have a pressure canner, an electric pressure canner. But I haven't tried the whole canning meat thing with it. But I have a friend who we're definitely going to do it this year because he has a big pressure canner and he does a lot of it. And he's given me some moose meat, but there'll be canned meat on the venison on the website at some point this fall.
Okay.
And,
I'm kind of curious. Yeah. Would you suggest, I was thinking, just cube up a roast and throw it in there, but we should actually sear it a little bit first and then put it in the pressure canner with a bunch of seasonings and stuff?
I don't want to say it yet because I don't, because I want to learn from a few different people and really see, exactly what the best way to do that is.
We should have you back.
I have absolutely no experience with canning the meat, so I want to wait on that. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Cool. So it sounds like there's a lot of different good recipes in there for antelope, pronghorn, venison, and all
just anything. If you have, whether it's a moose, an elk, an antelope, mule deer, whitetail. You can use any of the venison recipes. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to kind of touch on here a little bit was, and I know that I saw this on his website, and I had to try a couple recipes before getting them here on the podcast, but another one of the ones I tried out that I really enjoyed was the salmon chowder recipe. Yeah, I was just...
Was that because it has bacon in it?
Oh, the bacon definitely helped.
It's not really a Lent-friendly...
No, it's not. But,
you can make it without bacon.
I can't even make that in this... Oh, I was thinking about making
and it starts with bacon grease. But, I mean, you can make it without it.
Yeah.
It just really... It kind of puts it over the top.
But I did get a little bit of the fish flavor in there, too, though. So it wasn't, like, super overpowering for me, but...
Because, you use
fish broth.
Yeah, seafood stock. Or now, if you don't have certain stores, Walmart here right now, can't find seafood stock. But
got mine in Hornbachers, I think.
Yeah, but you cannot. They don't have seafood stock at Walmart anymore.
I was afraid to try.
They had it, but so clam juice you can mix. You can use clam juice instead, and that's everywhere. You'll be able to find clam juice anywhere. You can find clam juice at a grocery store. You can find clam juice at your local liquor store for making.
Some kind of martini thing.
No, it's for.
I don't even know.
It's your Bloody Marys, but instead of, like Clamato juice is just clam juice and tomato juice. Oh. So, yeah, I mean, if you're in a small town, even in wherever you're at in the United States, you should be able to find clam juice. So you can be able to substitute that if you can't find seafood stock.
Yeah, so that's one I'd recommend trying out. Do you have another salmon recipe that you like or that you'd recommend?
I don't, remember I'm trying to cook with anything with wild game and fish that we catch. And so you can catch Chinook salmon over by Lake Sakakawea. That's the one place.
That was what was on
the website. That's why it's on there, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of salmon recipes because I really want to be true to, is it a store-bought salmon or is it a, so whether it's walleye or perch or bluegill or catfish, it's stuff that we catch here. There's a few like redfish and flounder. I got invited to go out down to Texas and I got to do kayak fishing in December. So there's a few of those recipes.
Earlier when I was trying to figure out what it was,
it
was a salmon recipe because you share a little story about salmon and how they're found in North Dakota.
Yeah,
and I had no reason.
On Lake Sakakawea, yeah.
I had no idea.
They've been stocking them since right around the time I was born. So like 50 years we've been stocking them in North Dakota.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So
it's a big salmon fishery. It's actually a big salmon fishery. It's kind of a like July, August is when you're really going to be able to catch them, and they have guides out there. It's a big deal. Huh. It's a really big deal. But like right around that end of July, mid-July, into early August is when the salmon are really active and you're going to catch them.
Yeah. So you pretty much need a guide to get good luck?
Yeah. Or just somebody who knows what's going on because the depth and how much you're going to fish them. You really kind of have to know what's going on.
And do you know if you need a specific
you don't
salmon
need a special
stamp or anything?
No, we're not.
If my angler license, I'm good to go.
No, the only fish... Remember, we're not like Minnesota, our wonderful neighbors over to the east, across the river. So North Dakota, we have no closed fishing season. We don't need a walleye stamp or a trout stamp. Every single fish species is open all year round, except for paddlefish. And paddlefish, you need a tag, and you can catch one. And that always starts May 1st. And the only place you're going to go is up by Williston. Yeah. That's right where there's a couple spots up by Williston, but that's they have a quota. So as soon as they get the amount of fish taken, it shuts down. So you really want to try to be out there May 1st. And there's a lot of paddlefish recipes. I love cooking with paddlefish.
I should try. I'm not much of a winter fisherman at all, but I should almost try to.
That's a big snagging. You snag them. It's a whole other deal.
Different style.
Yeah, okay, you're not catching them. They're not biting on a night crawler or a lure. You're literally snagging them, and that's the only fish that you're allowed to snag legally in the state of North Dakota. But everything else is open. You can fish for anything all year round.
Yeah, that's
any other fish
awesome.
In North Dakota. Yeah. And you don't need you just need a fishing license if you're 16 or up.
Jeff's very knowledgeable when it comes to North Dakota hunting and fishing. you can always shoot an email. What's your email?
You can either email at jeff@wildgameandfish.com.
Yeah, or you can find them on Instagram.
Yep. My Instagram is @wildgameandfish. Or you can sign up for the newsletter on the website, wildgameandfish.com. You can sign up for the newsletter and get a new recipe every Tuesday morning. And a lot of people will email me. They'll try the recipe or they'll have a question. And I check my emails every day. I'll get back to people or they'll let me know if I forget to list that I forgot to preheat the oven. I have people who read every line of that recipe within minutes of it coming out, and I will be able to correct it on the website because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have some pretty hardcore followers.
Yeah, they kind of get into it, huh?
Yeah, which is great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So they're good recipe testers too. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And pretty much all of them are really everything is family friendly because we have a 9-year-old daughter, and so she tests every recipe. My wife and daughter, every recipe on there has been tested.
Do you have like a clarifier indicator on your recipes, like, hey, gluten free or
I haven't done that. So somebody emailed me the other day or messaged me and said, how many calories are in this recipe? Wow. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. So I really haven't done that. That's a whole other thing. I should be able to do, I mean, I can definitely look at the ingredients and tell people, if there's...
Right, and most people that are gluten-free kind of know what to avoid.
Yeah. But yeah, there's pretty much anything for everybody. I mean, whether you're looking for soups, for salads, it's not just throw it in a crock pot and make it into a stew. That there's all kinds of great recipes, and I try to keep it healthy as best I can, and ingredients that you can find, that you don't have to order it on Amazon special. There might be a couple instances with that, but pretty much everything I want people to be able to make it on a weeknight. It's either 30 minutes or less, or in a crock pot, so you can put it in the morning and it's ready when you get home. That's really the basis of the website, is what I try to do, and really make it attainable for everybody.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy the newsletters and learning a little bit more about hunting and fishing in North Dakota. You said earlier when we were talking prior to the episode here, you're involved in some of the different hunting within North Dakota. Like you said, you're on a board for
backcountry hunters and anglers.
So this guy's involved while he's providing the recipes. It's great.
Yeah, and I like doing different cooking demonstrations for different groups. I do cooking demonstrations for Pheasants Forever. I did the Cass County Wildlife Club. I cooked for them. And then I'm on the state board for backcountry hunters and anglers. I'll be at the National Rendezvous, which is in Missoula, Montana, June 12th. And if anybody out there really wants to eat, you want to try one of the dishes I'm cooking for the field to table dinner for the BHA Rendezvous in Missoula, Montana, and it's only $600 a plate.
It's a good fundraiser.
Yeah, it's a good fundraiser. No pressure. Cooking for 100 people at $600 a plate.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so I get to do that. But I'll be at the first Red River Market here in downtown Fargo. I'll be at the very first one. The very first one. They always have a different cooking demonstration on Saturday morning during the Red River Market, and I get to do the very first one.
Okay.
I think that's in July, like right after the 4th of
July. I go to a couple
July.
of them once in a while.
Yeah, so I'll get to do that. That'll be a wild game or fish cooking demonstration. We'll see what I come up with. But yeah, so I do different cooking demonstrations all over the country. But I love doing that. I'm kind of backcountry hunters and anglers is my is really when it comes to conservation. There's so many different organizations out there that you can get involved in, and I didn't want to do. I used to do Ducks Unlimited. I used to be on the board for that, but I just really concentrate on one.
Is that a little bit more of a local?
BHA is a national. It's actually international. Yeah, but it's really concentrating on keeping public lands public. And there's lots of different things going on in the courts and whatnot. But being able to have access. I mean, people not everybody's a landowner. Not everybody can get a gratis tag or, so how can we preserve public land hunting for everybody, whether it's a state wildlife management area or it's the national grasslands? There's over 1 million acres of national grasslands in North Dakota, and I think people forget about that. There's all kinds of great public land hunting, camping opportunities that we go out to the grasslands north of Medora. We don't stay in Medora. We go north of Medora, and you can just pull over on the side of the road and camp anywhere you want. Mm-hmm. for free. It's phenomenal. It's
especially when it comes to like
absolutely
hunting
phenomenal.
or something. If you want to,
Yeah, but even just the girls and I, we're literally a couple hundred yards away. Our favorite spot is a couple hundred yards away from where Theodore Roosevelt had his ranch. That is not in Medora. It's about 45 minutes on back roads north of Medora.
Is it pretty close to the northern unit up there? Or?
It's not the north unit. And then there's the south unit.
Yeah.
And then there is the Elkhorn unit. It's right on the Missouri River, the Little Missouri, that's where he actually had his ranch. You're going to hit some gravel roads, but it's a great place to go. And, but just not a lot of people visit. There's not any standing buildings anymore, but it's a beautiful spot. And right outside of that, it's small. It's a little unit. But right outside of that, you're surrounded by grasslands, national grasslands. And you can go hike and hunt, do whatever you want on there. It's phenomenal.
And there's not much for rattlesnakes, if I recall.
No?
There's rattlesnakes?
There's a few rattlesnakes. Okay.
Yeah. Someone told me one time that there wasn't very many, but maybe it was once you get
it kind of depends on what part. Yeah. That spot, I've never seen a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
In Theodore Roosevelt South Unit, there's rattlesnakes. Yeah. I've seen quite a few. My very first hike ever in that park. Yeah. The first minute I saw a rattlesnake.
Oh my.
Yeah. But, so I mean, really trying to preserve my love of North Dakota, and I really just want to make it so people can hunt and fish in North Dakota, and I welcome anybody to be able to do it, whether you live in the state or not. I'm not one like, we got to keep North Dakota hunting for North Dakota hunters, and I invite people here all the time. And there's plenty of public land for everybody. There's great opportunities for everybody. And if you are a hunter or an angler, I am now living in North Dakota, and I stayed here because somebody took me hunting. Because I didn't have a dad he just didn't do that. And that's not I have a great dad, but that just wasn't his thing. But because somebody invited me, mm-hmm. I got to fulfill a lifelong childhood dream. And then now look where I'm at now, decades later, and getting to do what I love and support my family by doing it. And if anybody is out there you don't have anybody to take you hunting or fishing, you can email me and I'll take you hunting or fishing.
There you go.
Right? So there's opportunity here, and I'd love, if you want to do it, I'd love to take you out. And I'm not a licensed guide and outfitter, so it's not going to cost you a penny, but I would just love to be able to take anybody who wants to go. Yeah. But if you're out there and you're a hunter or angler, be open to taking new people. Yeah. Definitely.
I really appreciate my coworker, Craig. He's helped me out with my first elk tag.
Yeah.
Here in North Dakota. I went and did cow because I was like, I don't want to wait forever to get a bull. But
did you get one?
I did get one, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, it was like a drew my first year.
Yes, me too. Well, it took me 2 years.
Okay.
But great odds if you want to go elk hunting.
Yeah.
Where Theodore Roosevelt hunted elk. You can go.
Yep.
And last year was a 70% chance you got one.
Wow, if you did cow.
Yeah. 70% chance. You're not going to get that anywhere.
My brother applied and didn't get it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's great.
He went, I remember it was 2 years ago maybe, but he had to apply for the cow because he's like, this will be the last summer here and I'm probably going to be moving back to Minnesota. So we tried to, didn't pull.
Oh, shoot. But no, that's good for you. That's a great thing. If you want to shoot a bull, you can go Wyoming, Montana.
The bull was there. It probably could,
Oh, we saw
bulls. The experience is the same.
Yeah, this last year we had 2 guys with cow tags, and all we saw were bulls. It was crazy. They were everywhere. Giants, massive. But, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Yep. Probably not. It's another story for another time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so if you're wanting to reach out to Jeff, you can find him on his website at wildgameandfish.com. Also on Instagram at Wild Game and Fish. Did I say that right?
Yep, that's right. Wild Game and Fish.
Yeah, and you can also find me also at a Homegrown Fam on Instagram. If you have any questions, I have a feeling we might get Jeff back here one of these days and talk a little bit more about some other stuff. But
you bet. Yeah.
Maybe canning meat. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Once I do it, we can come back and talk about it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Jeff, for joining us here today.
You bet. Thank you.